The restaurant was alive with the soft hum of chatter, clinking glasses, and the subtle hiss of sizzling dishes from the kitchen. Everything gleamed under the golden chandeliers. Marble floors, polished tables, delicate porcelain cups. But none of it caught the attention of Amara. She moved through the restaurant with her usual precision, balancing plates as if they were extensions of her own hands. Yet her mind was elsewhere. Her blue eyes, like shards of frozen sky, scanned the room, catching the reflections of her co-workers whispering and pointing. Their envy always lingered behind polite smiles and feigned greetings. Amara tied her long natural hair into a neat bun, a soft halo that contrasted against the smooth silk of her uniform. She knew she stood out, the only black woman in the place, the only one with eyes that made strangers stare. Yet, despite that, she had been labeled ugly, weird, and low-class more times than she could count. "Amara, could you maybe smile like a normal person for once?" snapped Minji, her supervisor, her lips curling with that smug superiority she always carried. Amara arched an eyebrow, plating the appetizer with the delicate touch of a seasoned server. "Sure, Minji. Should I also grow an extra brain while I'm at it? Or is that too much effort?" she replied, her voice laced with playful venom. The words hung in the air. A few nearby waiters chuckled, careful to not attract Minji's wrath, while the supervisor's face reddened with fury. "Do not sass me, Amara. Guests will come soon, and I want guests." Amara interrupted, spinning a plate in her hands like a mini performance. "Oh, you mean the people you plan to flatter while secretly plotting to ruin my life? Got it." Minji's lips trembled, trying to form a reply, but she swallowed her words. She hated that Amara had the audacity to be funny, to fight back with words sharper than knives. Most people cowered under her tongue lashing. Amara laughed at it. Amara moved past her co-workers, who made a half-hearted effort to block her path. She whispered, loud enough for them to hear but casual enough for guests to remain unaware. "Careful, girls. You might trip over all that bitterness you're carrying." As the clock ticked closer to the evening's busiest hour, the restaurant doors opened with a gust of cold air, and in walked a man who immediately drew every eye. He was tall, impeccably dressed, with sharp features and a presence that made the room feel smaller. A hush fell over the waiting staff as the hostess guided him to a reserved table. Amara's pulse quickened, not because of the man's obvious power or charm, but because she felt something electric, almost magnetic, in the way he moved. She approached the table, bowing politely. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Le Soleil. My name is Amara. May I take your order?" The man's gaze swept over her, lingering just long enough to unsettle her, before he smiled. It wasn't just a smile. It was a grin that promised he already knew something about her she didn't. "You will take care of me tonight, won't you, Amara?" His voice was smooth, almost teasing. Amara's chest lifted with a mix of nerves and pride. She glanced back, spotting Minji's panicked expression. She can't serve me," the supervisor hissed under her breath, voice dripping with disgust. "You don't understand. She's low class. The man's laughter cut through her words, sharp and controlled. "Low class?" he repeated, leaning back slightly. "I think you need to understand who you're speaking to." Amara raised an eyebrow, daring to meet his gaze. "Oh, I understand perfectly. But, trust me, Minji," she said, loud enough for the supervisor to hear. "Some of us can actually do our jobs without stepping on other people's insecurities." The supervisor's face turned crimson. She opened her mouth to argue but faltered as the man continued to stare at Amara, entirely dismissing her protest. "Amara, you'll handle my meal," he said with a calm authority that made the air between them tense and electric. "Do not disappoint me." Amara's lips twitched, suppressing a smirk. "Disappoint you? Oh, sir, you have no idea what you just signed up for." Every move she made, pouring wine, describing dishes, answering questions, was executed with both grace and a subtle playfulness. She joked under her breath when she noticed the tiny imperfections in the dishes, making the man laugh quietly. It was the kind of laughter that made her feel lighter, yet dangerously aware of how alive she felt around him. Meanwhile, her co-workers were fuming. Their whispers and glares were so loud in their own minds, Amara could practically hear them. "She thinks she's special," Minji muttered. Because she is, whispered Hygiene, one of the other waitresses, though she spoke it like a curse. Amara, hearing nothing but the subtle annoyance, decided to spice it up. I'm sorry, ladies. Did you say something? I couldn't hear over the sound of me doing my job perfectly. The man chuckled at her, clearly amused by her audacity. You're fearless, aren't you? I prefer honest, Amara said with a shrug, and slightly savage. Keeps life interesting. The rest of the evening unfolded in a blur. Orders were taken, jokes were exchanged, and the tension between Amara and the supervisor reached its peak. Every time Minji tried to undermine her, Amara had a comeback ready, sharp as a blade. Every time the man smiled at her wit, her chest tightened in a way she couldn't ignore. By the end of the night, as she cleared the final dishes and wiped down the polished tables, Amara felt a strange sense of pride. She had survived the supervisor, survived the envious glares, and somehow, in the midst of all that, caught the attention of a man whose presence made everything else fade. The restaurant lights dimmed, casting long shadows, and the man waved her over one last time. You've got fire, he said softly, almost like a confession. I like that. Amara tilted her head, blue eyes glinting under the dim chandelier light. Fire? Careful, sir. You might get burned if you keep staring. He laughed, a low, satisfying sound that lingered in her ears long after he left. And as she watched him disappear into the night, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that her life, as complicated and painful as it had been in that restaurant, was about to change. She just didn't know how, and oh bestie, she had no idea it was about to explode. The morning sun spilled through the wide glass windows of Le Soleil, casting a golden glow across the polished marble floor. The restaurant was quieter than the previous evening, but that only made the tension thicker. Amara tied her long natural hair into a sleek bun, adjusted her uniform, and surveyed the room with those piercing blue eyes that had already caused a storm the night before. Minji, her supervisor, hovered nearby, fingers tapping on a clipboard as if the mere act of breathing around Amara was a personal offense. Don't forget, she hissed, leaning so close that Amara could smell the cheap perfume clinging to her. You are not to attend to any VIPs today, only the regulars. Understood. Amara smirked, setting a stack of menus on a table. Crystal clear, Minji. I'll make sure to invisibly serve the VIPs, just in case your world comes crashing down without me. Minji's face twisted in disgust. Your mouth is fabulous. Amara cut in, voice smooth and teasing. Yes, I know. Thank you for noticing. The supervisor spun away, muttering under her breath, while Amara glided across the room, effortlessly balancing trays. She could feel the tension radiating from the other servers. They whispered, glared, and plotted, yet she moved as if none of it mattered, because honestly, none of it did. It was the calm before the storm. A black luxury car glided into the restaurant's valet zone. The engine's purr announced the arrival of someone important. Amara's pulse ticked faster, her instincts telling her this wasn't just any customer. She heard Minji's sharp intake of breath as she stiffened beside the entrance. Amara approached, offering her trademark polite smile. Good morning, sir. Welcome to Le Soleil. I'm Amara, and I'll be attending to you. The man's eyes, dark, precise, calculating, fixed on her instantly. The same man from last night, the one whose presence had set her nerves buzzing like electricity. His gaze lingered just long enough to make the air between them taut. Amara, he said smoothly, his lips curling into a faint smirk. I hope you remember me. Amara raised an eyebrow, leaning slightly forward. Of course, sir. You have unforgettable taste. She said it with just enough sarcasm to make him grin. Minji's jaw dropped. I told you she shouldn't serve him. You're too low class for this table, she hissed, dragging Amara aside. Amara ignored her, giving the supervisor a soft, chilling smile. Ah, Minji, still obsessed with trying to ruin my day? Don't worry. I make my own luck. The man, who had been observing quietly, raised a hand. She will attend to me. I insist. Minji froze mid-sentence, her face draining of color. Sir, you heard me, he said, his voice calm but firm, leaving no room for argument. Then, softer, Almost teasing, he added, "She intrigues me, and I like being intrigued." Amara felt a thrill rush through her chest. This was bold, dangerous, and yet exhilarating. She grinned at him, bowing lightly. "Well, sir, in that case, allow me to make this experience unforgettable." As she moved to take his order, her mind raced. She had no idea who he really was, just that he carried power, danger, and charm in equal measure. And yet, she found herself smiling at the thought of matching his energy, trading quips and sly comments with someone who could actually keep up with her wit. "So," she began, leaning slightly on the edge of the table as she scribbled his order, "do you always show up at restaurants unannounced to confuse the staff? Or is it just me you're testing?" He chuckled, low and amused. "You think this is a test?" "Of course," she said, tilting her head. "Everything's a test when your supervisor has a vendetta against you. I just didn't expect it to come with an audience like you." He studied her face, blue eyes piercing yet gentle, as if memorizing every detail. "You have a remarkable way of speaking," he said. "Bold, unapologetic, rare qualities." Amara shrugged with feigned casualness. "Well, sir, life's too short to be boring, especially when you're surrounded by people who try their hardest to annoy you daily." She gave a pointed glance toward Minji, who was busy glaring at her from across the room. The man laughed quietly, a sound that made her feel both exposed and safe. "I like that. You're unpredictable." "Unpredictable keeps life interesting," she said, pouring water into his glass. "If you want boring, just look at the other servers. They'll entertain you with their passive-aggressive stares." Her boldness only drew him in further. He leaned back in his chair, casually observing her as she moved, smiling whenever she tossed a sly comment in his direction. Every time Minji tried to intervene, Amara had a clever reply ready, making her supervisor's blood pressure spike with every exchange. "She's impossible," Minji muttered under her breath, pinching the bridge of her nose. Amara leaned slightly over the table, eyes gleaming. "Impossible? Nah, Minji, I'm just honest. But don't worry, you'll always have me to remind you how ordinary you are." The man's laugh rolled across the quiet dining area, soft yet commanding. "You have a fearless tongue," he said, "and yet it suits you." Amara smirked, leaning back as she finished placing his appetizer. Fearless? Or just trained by constant daily abuse? Either way, I'm thriving. He nodded approvingly, watching her as she went about her work. "I hope you know, you don't have to endure any of that. Ever." Amara blinked, a faint flicker of surprise in her eyes. "Oh? And why is that?" "Because," he said, voice low and deliberate, "I choose you, and when I choose someone, they don't work another day if they don't want to." The words sent a shiver down her spine. They weren't promises she expected, nor compliments she sought. They were a challenge, an offer, and an acknowledgement of everything she had been fighting for. Recognition, respect, and a life where her uniqueness was celebrated, not scorned. Amara's lips twitched, a mischievous spark in her blue eyes. "Well, sir, that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me, and also the scariest." "Bold move." He leaned forward slightly, matching her smirk. "Boldness suits you." The rest of the service passed in a blur of subtle teasing, clever comebacks, and the kind of tension that made every glance feel electric. Amara discovered she could joke, banter, and push boundaries with him in ways she had never dared with anyone else, and he seemed to enjoy every second of it. By the time she cleared the table, the entire restaurant had felt the ripple of their energy. Guests whispered about the chemistry, co-workers stared in envy and confusion, and Minji was ready to combust. Amara placed the last plate into the tray, glanced at him and whispered, "Careful, sir. You might just make this the most unforgettable dining experience of your life." He leaned in, voice low, almost conspiratorial. "I have no doubt about that." As he left, Amara watched him glide out of the restaurant, unaware that he carried secrets darker and more dangerous than anything she could imagine. And as the doors closed behind him, the electricity lingered, wrapping around her like a promise she couldn't yet name. Her life was about to change, and for the first time, Amara felt a thrill at the idea. Not fear, not worry, but excitement. Because maybe, just maybe, someone was finally seeing her for everything she truly was. The restaurant hummed with the usual pre-lunch energy, but for Amara, the world felt sharper, more vivid. Every reflection on the polished marble floor seemed to hold a secret. Every clink of a cup, every whisper, felt like a countdown to something she couldn't yet name. She tied her long natural hair into a bun, smoothing a stray curl with a practiced flick, and let her piercing blue eyes sweep over the room. Minji, her supervisor, was already in place, arms crossed like a statue carved from pure disapproval. Her glare could curdle milk, but Amara met it with her usual playful audacity. "Morning, Minji," she said, setting down a tray of appetizers. "You look tense. Should I call the fire department? Or will yoga work?" Minji's lips pressed into a thin line. "Do not sass me," she warned, though her hands shook ever so slightly. Amara's grin widened. "Oh, don't worry. I'll be perfectly polite. Just don't expect me to ignore the glaring jealousy radiating off you like a neon sign." A few nearby servers stifled laughs, careful to avoid Minji's wrath. It was a dangerous game. One wrong comment could earn them a lecture, but watching Amara dance along the edge of confrontation was secretly thrilling. The door swung open, and in walked the man who had already stirred her curiosity and nerves, Jaehyun, dressed in a sharply tailored black suit. His presence alone seemed to command the room. He moved with a predator's grace, his gaze scanning the restaurant, finally locking on Amara like she was the only person in the space. Amara's pulse quickened. She had no idea who he truly was, only that every instinct in her body whispered danger. Yet the thrill of being noticed, of being chosen, made her chest tighten with something she couldn't quite name. "Amara," he said smoothly, walking toward her with that calm, dangerous energy that made her feel simultaneously brave and exposed. "You will serve me today. Only you." Her eyes flicked to Minji, whose face was a masterpiece of shock and fury. "Sir," the supervisor stammered, as if his choice had shattered her carefully constructed world. She's not appropriate for." Jaehyun's voice cut through hers like a blade. "She is exactly what I want." Amara arched an eyebrow, smirking. "Well, sir, that's either the bravest or the dumbest thing you've said all day. I'll let you decide which as we go along." Jaehyun's lips twitched with amusement, clearly entertained by her boldness. "I think it's brave," he said, voice low, almost teasing. "And I like bravery." Minji sputtered, unable to find words, while Amara leaned slightly toward Jaehyun. "Bravery suits you too," she whispered, a sly smile on her face. "Or maybe that's just the way you walk into places and scare everyone into silence. Either way, impressive." He laughed, low and deliberate, the kind of sound that made the room feel smaller, more intimate. "You're fearless," he said. "Or I've just survived worse," she replied, glancing at her supervisor with a playful glint in her eyes. "Some of us get stronger by being underestimated every day." The meal began, and Amara moved like a conductor orchestrating a symphony. Each dish she placed on the table came with a quip, a joke, or a playful remark that made Jaehyun chuckle quietly. He seemed fascinated by her wit, her audacity, and the way she carried herself with effortless grace despite the venomous glares surrounding her. "So," she said, leaning slightly forward as she refilled his water glass, "do you usually choose the staff who annoy their supervisors the most, or am I just lucky?" Jaehyun's dark eyes glimmered with amusement. "Maybe both," he said. "There's something intoxicating about someone who doesn't bow to intimidation." Amara smirked. "Intoxicating, huh? Careful, sir. You might get addicted." He leaned back, studying her, clearly savoring the exchange. "Perhaps I already am." Every movement, every word between them became a delicate dance. Amara teased, flirted, and tested boundaries, while Jaehyun matched her with calm, sharp wit that made her feel both challenged and exhilarated. It was a game she had never played before, yet instinctively understood. Meanwhile, the restaurant staff whispered in disbelief. Her co-workers were visibly boiling, their envy no longer subtle. Minji's jaw tightened with every passing second, her hands trembling as she clutched her clipboard. Amara noticed, of course, and decided to press the advantage. "Oh, Minji," she said under her breath, loud enough for the supervisor to hear. You should smile more. It might distract from your glaring inability to control anything around here. The supervisor's face twisted in fury, but she was helpless. Jaehyun's attention was entirely on Amara. By the end of the meal, Amara had not only delivered impeccable service but had also left Jaehyun laughing more than anyone else in the restaurant. He stood, reaching for his coat, and called her over one last time. "You've done well today," he said, his tone both commanding and personal. "I want you to know, I will choose you whenever I need." Amara's heart raced. "Choose me?" Bold words. "Dangerous too," she replied, smirking. "But I like bold. Makes life interesting." He inclined his head, a subtle grin on his lips. "Good, because I intend to keep choosing you." And just like that, as he left the restaurant, Amara felt the world shift. The buzzing of her co-workers' whispers, the simmering fury of her supervisor, and the gleam of her own blue eyes in the mirror. All of it collided into a single, undeniable truth. Her life had changed, though she didn't yet know how completely. And somewhere deep down, she felt a spark of excitement. For the first time, someone saw her. Not just her appearance, but her fire, her spirit, her audacity. And bestie, that spark was about to ignite everything around her. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Le Soleil, painting golden stripes across the polished marble floors. The usual quiet hum of preparation filled the air. But for Amara, the world felt charged, like electricity coursing just beneath the surface. Her blue eyes sparkled as she adjusted the neatly tied bun of her long natural hair, her gaze sweeping across the restaurant. Every reflection, every clink of cutlery, every subtle whisper of the staff seemed to pulse with anticipation. Amara knew something had shifted. She could feel it deep in her bones. The previous night had changed the dynamic of everything in her life. Though she didn't yet understand how or why, she moved gracefully through the room, balancing trays with the ease of someone who had mastered the art of survival, her mind constantly alert to both opportunity and danger. Min-ji, her supervisor, was already stationed near the entrance, clipboard in hand and lips pressed into a tight, angry line. Her eyes followed Amara like a hawk, full of resentment that could almost be touched. "Do not even think about doing anything that might attract attention today," Min-ji snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Amara grinned without looking at her. "Attention? Me? Never. I'll just fade quietly into the background, like a shadow or a thunderstorm. Depends on the mood." The supervisor's jaw twitched. "Don't sass me. Not now, not ever." Amara's smirk widened. "Oh, Min-ji, you do realize, the more you try to control me, the more entertaining I get, right?" She sauntered past her, deliberately slow, giving Min-ji enough time to feel every ounce of her boldness. The quiet hum of conversation and clinking dishes was interrupted by a sudden, smooth purr of a black luxury car pulling into the valet. Heads turned instinctively, but Amara's gaze sharpened immediately. She knew that energy, that presence. The man from the previous night, Jaehyun, was returning. As he entered the restaurant, moving with a predator's grace, the staff couldn't hide their awe and curiosity. But Amara? She met him with her signature combination of curiosity, confidence, and sass. "Good morning, sir. I hope your appetite is as large as your reputation," she said, leaning lightly against the polished counter. He looked at her, his dark eyes calculating yet amused, and smiled faintly. "Amara, I hope today you will surprise me." Amara raised an eyebrow, her lips twitching into a teasing grin. "Surprise you? You have no idea what you're in for. I'm full of surprises." Min-ji's lips quivered in anger. She opened her mouth to protest, but Jaehyun's gaze cut through her like steel. "She will serve me," he said firmly, the kind of authority that silenced rooms. "I choose her." The words hit like a thunderclap. Min-ji froze, her face turning an ashen shade of fury. "Sir, You've heard me," Jaehyun said calmly. "She intrigues me, and I only deal with what intrigues me." Amara's pulse raced. Chosen. That word alone made her stomach twist with a mix of excitement and disbelief. She could feel the eyes of every co-worker burning into her back, their envy radiating like heat. Yet the thrill of being noticed by someone like him outweighed everything else. "Bold choice," she said, tilting her head and smirking. But I hope you're ready to deal with the consequences. I'm not exactly the easiest person to entertain. Jaehyun's lips curved into a low, approving smile. I'm not looking for easy. I'm looking for interesting. Amara's grin widened. Interesting, huh? Well, congratulations. You just found me. The meal began, and Amara moved like a dancer, a master of her craft. Every plate she placed, every word she spoke, was accompanied by subtle banter that made Jaehyun chuckle quietly. Her wit flowed naturally, sharp yet playful, teasing him without crossing lines, testing boundaries without fear. So, she said as she poured water into his glass, do you always choose the staff who have a habit of making their supervisors miserable, or am I just lucky? He studied her with dark, calculating eyes that seemed to see right through her. Maybe both, he said, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. There's something intoxicating about someone who doesn't bow to intimidation. Amara's lips twitched into a mischievous smile. Intoxicating, huh? Careful, sir. You might get addicted to it. Jaehyun laughed. A deep, rich sound that made her chest tighten in a way she hadn't expected. Perhaps I already am, he said softly. The restaurant staff whispered among themselves, barely able to conceal their amazement. Amara's co-workers glared, their envy reaching a boiling point. Minji, for all her attempts at control, was powerless. Every time she tried to interject, Amara's sharp replies left her flustered, speechless, and simmering with fury. Oh, Minji, Amara said under her breath, loud enough for the supervisor to hear. You should smile more. It might distract from your glaring inability to control anything around here. Minji's face twisted in rage, but she dared not respond. Jaehyun's attention was entirely on Amara, and that was all that mattered in that moment. By the time the meal ended, Amara had not only executed flawless service but had also captivated Jaehyun entirely. He leaned in close as she cleared the final dishes, his gaze intense yet playful. You've done exceptionally well today, he said, low and deliberate. I want you to understand. You don't have to endure any of that, not ever. Amara blinked, caught off guard by the sincerity in his voice. You mean all this? She gestured toward the restaurant, her co-workers, Minji's scowl. You really mean I don't have to deal with it anymore? Exactly, he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. I choose you, and when I choose someone, they don't work another day if they don't want to. Her heart pounded, a rush of emotions flooding her. Excitement, disbelief, and a strange, heady sense of empowerment. Well, bold words, she said, smirking. And dangerous, too. I like bold. Makes life interesting. Jaehyun inclined his head, his eyes glittering with something unreadable. Good, because I intend to keep choosing you. Amara's co-workers were in stunned silence. Their envy was palpable, like static in the air, while Minji looked like she was about to combust. Amara leaned slightly toward Jaehyun, her smirk playful, teasing, and full of confidence. Careful, sir. You might just make this the most unforgettable experience of your life. He chuckled, leaning back with a relaxed, confident grace. I have no doubt about that. As he left the restaurant, Amara watched him glide out of sight, unaware of the dangerous world he belonged to. And somewhere deep down, she felt a spark of excitement she had never known before. For the first time, someone saw her. Not just her appearance, not just the exotic allure of her blue eyes, but her fire, her wit, her audacity. And bestie, that spark was about to ignite everything around her. Her co-workers fumed in the aftermath. Whispers, judgmental stares, and barely concealed resentment filled the air. Minji's fury was almost tangible, as she clutched her clipboard like a lifeline. But Amara didn't flinch. She reveled in the chaos she'd left in her wake. That night, as Amara returned home, the city lights of Seoul twinkling like a sea of stars below her apartment window, she replayed every moment. Jaehyun's smile, his laugh, the way his gaze seemed to linger just enough to unsettle her. She wasn't naive. She didn't know the truth about him, but a dangerous, thrilling excitement thrummed through her veins. For the first time in her life, she felt chosen, and she was ready to embrace it.
Hello besties, thank you so much for watching. Episode 2 drops tomorrow. Kindly like, subscribe and share.